You're listening to the MLS Fantasy Insider, bringing you weekly tips, tricks, and advice for the official MLS fantasy game.
Think the music's over? Let's find out.
Uh-oh.
He'll cut it.
We're live.
Okay, great. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Tyler and I are holding the fort down tonight for Mr. Boss. He will hopefully be joining us a little bit later, but until then, you are welcome to Seattle 1-2. And Tyler's number 1, and I'm number 2. And so, yeah. We are going to get started. I know Reid already played the music, but I still wanted to say hi to everybody who's ever in chat. And we are going to get started right now. Tyler, are you good?
Yep.
All right, let's do it. Hello and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider, our preview of round 5 of the 2025 MLS Fantasy season. This round is brought to you by names you've never heard of making Team of the Week. Just kidding. It's actually brought to you by our amazing Patreon supporters. It's because of your support we're able to keep this project going. Head on over to patreon.com/MLSFI right now to learn more. I am your co-host, Ashley Savage, returned from a 1-week injury sideline of a beautiful midlife meniscus tear. And I'm holding down the fort tonight for our MLS Fantasy Boss, and I'm so thrilled to welcome our special guest, Tyler Ranchinator Norman, one of our incredible content contributors to MLSFI and one of our Discord mods. Tyler, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So a lot of people know you, but just for those who don't, I'm gonna hit you with some questions as we've been doing with guests this year, okay?
Oh
Did you
man, here
pre-read
we
these? You
go.
feeling
I did
okay?
not pre-read them.
Okay,
All right, I'm
great.
ready.
There we go. So how, and you might have touched on this a little bit last year, so you can give whatever version of your answer you would like, but how did you get into MLS Fantasy and what was your first experience playing the game?
I first started in what year was it now? 2012, 2013, something like
Okay.
that. Back when there was vice captains and all
Love it.
that, the good old
Yeah.
days. Um, I was more like a casual for a while. I just played
Mhm.
for, I don't know, like 2 years as a casual, and then I introduced actually your first guest here, which was the priest or Jeff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we started just competing back and forth, being like, hey, let's see who can beat each other this season. And we're kind of doing our own thing since then. And eventually we started to get pretty good and competitive at it. So we're like, I wonder if there's actually a community for this, because we knew there was there's communities for
Yeah.
like everything.
100%.
And he's actually the one that found the Discord server, and well, like as soon as it got made, it was the same year. What was it 2018? 20, I think that was 2018.
I think so too. Yeah.
And we both joined within like 2 months of the Discord being made. I've been around for quite a while now. I think in 2020 I became a moderator of the server, something like that.
That's sounds right to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been doing my thing ever since.
I love it. And we're happy to have you a part of the community, and you're such a great contributor. And I'm glad that you guys found this together. It's fun, right? That's kind of how I
Yeah.
stumbled into it too, is just competing with 1, 2, 3 other people and then being like, well, wait, why aren't we competing with everybody? It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Now you don't have to get to, how the sausage is made here, but how do you, and I know there's other people that are helping you out this year and a little bit last year, what is your process when you're selecting differentials? Like, do you go absolutely like to the wall? Do you try to meet a little in the middle? Is there any trolling aspects coming into play? What is your process for those several, is it position based? What do you go through when you're doing that?
Yes to everything. Um, so for anybody that doesn't know, I write the differentials article, kind of spin off of my name, my handle. I started it because I was very well known for making differential picks in like 2019, 2020. So people are like, "Hey, why don't you write
Hmm.
about how you
I
make
think
these
Reid
picks?"
was like, "Why don't you write about it?"
Yeah.
Honestly.
And it started off, people that know me know it all started with this one guy named Nathan.
Know it so well.
Nathan was my guy, and he was the bonus point king of all bonus point players. And
And
I
he
was
did
picked,
start out cheap, right? Am I correct
he
in
was
remembering that?
very cheap,
Yes.
very
Okay.
cheap. And when
Because that's a good aspect of a
yeah,
differential.
yeah, and he was like, when I was first picking him, I believe the very first time I picked him, he was 0.07% ownage.
He was.
And
Oddly, I remember that.
because it was
You
007,
said
that's
it.
how I remember
Yes.
it.
Yes.
I he was one of the very first that I did, and I had him for like 5 weeks before people were like, "Hey, Nathan's a good guy to pick," and I'm like, "Yeah, I've had him this whole time." And then, funny enough, I faded him the one time that he got a red card, and everyone was mad, and I'm like, it
Oh,
didn't look like the game for him.
yeah.
I since then I've done some absolutely wild differentials, such as
Yeah.
like Rodriguez, he's another San Jose guy.
Yep.
But one of my really wild ones was, what was his name? I can't even remember his name. That's how wild it was. It was when Miami was like really bad, before the Messi days, before the
Uh-huh.
Suarez days, absolutely like bottom of the league. And I was like, I feel like they got a clean sheet this week. And I picked one of their center
Oh,
backs.
I remember this
Yeah,
kid.
he got a goal
Yeah.
and a clean sheet. It was like a
Yes.
14-point game,
Yes.
and I was one of the top that week.
Yeah.
But yeah, so base that's all to say like what I do. Anyways, the way I go about selecting who I want to pick for differentials,
Hmm.
it's the first thing I look at is like gut. Like right away,
Yeah.
even this week, I didn't even need to look at some guys. I'm like, yeah, they're gonna be in the article. And other times, if I'm like kind of struggling for a pick, like my specialty is like defense and mids. I feel like Brandon and Matt, who are the other two that Brandon helped
Hmm.
last year, Matt's helping this year. Um, they are pretty much better at like forwards and mids. But when I look at it, I first look at the matchups and
Yeah.
then figure out if there's someone from the matchup who's chalky. For example, I could look at this week and be like, oh, well, Rusnak is a very chalky pick. He's
Hmm.
definitely going to
Let's
be
go,
someone to
Georgie.
look at.
Yeah.
And I would look at like, okay, Manungu could be fun, Rothrock could be fun, and just pick like some name that's not the main guy.
Yeah.
Other times it's, hey, I really need a defender. What's a team that looks like a pretty random clean sheet that they might get? I might like scroll through this, be like, oh, maybe Colorado's going to clean sheet Portland. Or go through and be like, maybe this is the week Toronto gets a clean sheet. Last week was
Sure.
when I was like, maybe DC is going to get a clean sheet. And I threw a DC
Hmm.
defender on my bench. And it
Yep.
worked.
Hmm.
So I kind of just spitball. It's a lot of feel. It's not about looking at stats for me. I know for when Brandon was around, he was a very big stats guy.
Sure.
I'm not that guy when
You
it
just
comes
kind
to
of let it ride.
differentials. I look at a guy, if they feel off to me, I won't pick them. If they feel right, I'll pick it.
I love it. I love it. Um, so you kind of touched on differentials, and I know you've played different seasons in a little bit of flux, but what is your approach to building a lineup each week when you're not on the pod? Because on a pod week, we make you do it on a Monday, which can be tricky. But what is your general approach this season?
This season is a little bit different from last few seasons because I've been really busy, but I'm making it, I kid you not, at like midnight on Fridays. And
I
right
love
before
it.
I go to bed, I make it, and then I go to bed and I wake up and I kind of look at lineups and adjust it based on
I was gonna say, how much do you tinker?
that. Not a whole lot. I try my
Okay.
best to not tinker at all, because
Okay.
from what I have experienced with my team, my first draft is usually pretty good.
Yep.
And then once I tinker, I get like I feel bad if one of my main guys didn't hit.
Sure. What is
Uh,
your approach this season to like lineups drop out of position? Are you falling for that this year? Are you avoiding it? Are you trying to stick to your Friday night go to sleep
Sort
draft?
of, not fully.
Okay.
Like this last week, I picked up Raheem Edwards, seeing he was pretty far out of position.
Tyler, same.
You
Left him on the
um,
bench. Stick to
yeah,
your
yep.
two, Raheem.
No, I didn't grab Orishano when he was first out of position. I've thought about grabbing Orishano, but I was like, he's
Yeah.
expensive. Don't want to do that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I grabbed some guys out of
Since he's
position.
not great, I think we can say that while Reed's not here, they're not thriving.
Yeah, yeah, he's not who he used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, not always though.
Yeah, okay. And then again, like I said, I know you've kind of taken different approaches to different seasons, but going into this season, what is your advice that you would give someone who it's their first season, or maybe they, just found the game last year and this is their first, full time? What tips do you give those types of people?
There's a meme that goes around sometimes in chat. You know exactly which
Okay,
one with that
I
smile.
do. Uh-huh.
Uh, don't don't focus so much on chalk. Pick your differentials and have fun.
Sure.
Don't like be so stuck on, well, the stats say that this guy's the best guy to pick.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe instead you should just pick this other guy that the stats say is not a good guy to pick, because especially this season, that guy is probably the one that's going to score the goal.
Yep.
So
Yep.
just have fun with it. Don't be so worried about what points you're going to get, or like right now I'm I'm kind of middle of the road, but at the same time, make sure that you build your budget first too, because
Mm-hmm.
even though you can be like rank 2000 right now, by the end of the season you could easily be rank top 50 if you
Yep.
built your budget correctly.
Yep. Thank you. I feel like you were talking to me and I appreciate that. Um let's get into, as we're talking about this season, uh, you know, this run. Let's get into how we did last week. What did your last round look like?
I scored 67 points last week, mostly
Which I
due
will
to
say is a generally great score.
yeah. uh I'm now at a budget of 112.8.
Okay.
And I believe, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think this season differentials are king, which
I'd love to get into this with you, yeah, after we go over our picks, because
yeah,
yes, I think that Chalk has not been, I mean, look at our brought to you by a
yeah,
team of the week whose only name you really know is Messi. You might know some of the other people, but you didn't pick them.
yeah.
Um,
And
yeah, let's
yeah, so
let's get into that in a minute.
I love the fact that differentials are king this season because of who I am. It's just
I was
what
gonna
I
say
do.
it's your game. It's your game to lose, Tyler.
And so my big takeaway is chalk's not always the way to go, and
Yeah.
try to figure out what the bad chalk is. For example, this this round, I looked at everyone else picking Forsberg. I'm like, nah, he's not really in form right now. I'm not picking him.
Same.
But then at the same time, a lot of people picked Bernadeschi, and I didn't see the good in it, and he still scored well.
Yep.
So it just is a matter of figuring out what the good, they call it good chalk and bad chalk, figuring out
Yeah,
which
it's
one
not a
is
good
which.
term. We're gonna need to come up with something else for that, but
Yeah.
yeah. Um, what else were some surprises for you?
Um, some surprises I got. I'm actually pretty surprised that DC got the clean sheet, even though I grabbed one
I
for a
liked them
differential.
too. Yeah.
I I just I saw it was against a weak Montreal team that rotated, and I'm like, why not take a shot on it? It doesn't
Yeah.
hurt. And
I
it
wanted to
was
throw the keeper on the bench because I
I
thought
thought about it, but
he sucks,
he
but
was losing a
he's,
ton of value, so I was
I
nervous about
know.
that.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I picked up Rowls, who was already at like
Mhm.
$5, and I'm like, you
Yeah.
can't go much lower.
No.
Yeah. I also am very surprised that St. Louis, they're already on a
Mhm.
streak of 4 clean sheets in a row. And it's not just clean sheets, they have clean sheets against good teams that are scoring
On the
goals.
road. Two of their
2 of
biggest
them
clean
are on
sheets
the
came
road.
on
Yeah.
the road. Yeah.
So their opening game against Colorado was a clean sheet. On the road to
Mhm.
San Diego, who is very surprising this
And
season,
that
by
was
the
their
way.
home opener. Yeah.
Yeah. On the road to Galaxy, which I mean, you could argue they're not great this season,
Yeah.
but it's hard to
I
win
did
in
argue that at the start
it's
of the
hard to
season,
win
but
in LA though.
yeah,
And
reigning
then
champs. You can't go into that house all,
no. And
Yeah.
then just shut out Seattle, you know?
Yeah, we can move on. Uh, what else? What were some other disappointments?
uh After I say make sure you check what chalk is right and not, I'm just disappointed that the chalk mids did not do very well this week.
Chalk mids did not do well.
People like Hartel, Dryer,
Mhm.
very chalky mids. Where
Gazdag,
Gazdag did not score like
Forsberg.
hardly
Mhm.
anything. And
Yep,
the one I was most surprised and disappointed by was Hartel. Because
same.
and it sounds bad to say because it was against Seattle, but
Yeah,
Seattle was very weak and rotated and
they're
injured.
hurt. They just got knocked out of CCL. They just traveled to Mexico. They're on the road in the middle of the country. That's a team to bet against.
And
That's
we
nothing to do.
rotated.
A big time rotated. We lost 2 starters to injury, 3 in the course of a week.
Yeah.
So one for the season and the other for 4 to 6 weeks. So yeah, there's a lot of yes, that was a
Yeah.
team to
So
bet against
Hartel was
whether
like, oh yeah, definitely. And then it was
yeah,
Leuven was the guy to go.
yes. Well, that was
An
a gift
amazing free
from
kick.
God, beautiful free kick.
Yeah.
Yeah. But those are hard to predict, right? When you're looking at St. Louis midfield and you're looking at points from last season and also points this season, you're not
Yeah.
often gonna go a Leuven over Hartel, but that was the play this week.
Yeah.
Any other general takeaways from you, Tyler?
I'm just gonna reiterate, chalk's not always the way to go. Find a way to at least get 1 or 2 differentials in there
Yeah,
because it's good to be different from the crowd. Make the game
yeah,
fun for yourself, as I said earlier. Also, keep in mind the obvious clean sheet isn't as obvious as it seems, and the obvious captain could be a bust. Benteke, Hartel. Sorry,
yeah.
sorry. Had
Who'd you
something in my
captain?
throat. Hartel.
Okay, it's like get out of here. Yeah, let's kind of take a sec. I'll go over my round in a second, and I'm not avoiding it, but I am. But let's kind of chat on that for a little bit. A couple of times on the pod this season, I I didn't phrase it the same way you did, but the way that I'd phrased it was last year's production doesn't seem to be carrying over to this season yet for some of our bigger names. I would almost say all of our bigger names that aren't messy, right?
Mm-hmm.
A good amount of our consistent players, just to like not to, down on them, but Bawanga, um,
Lucha,
the Peck,
Evander,
Lucho, Evander, a couple,
Mukhtar. Yeah.
Mukhtar, Heel, a couple of other big players. Benteke has been hitting. Bernadette has been hitting. They weren't as consistent last season as they have been so far. And there's a bunch of great new players in the game to look at. But I would say some of your consistent defenders as well have not turned up in the way I think you would expect everyone to do in these first 4 rounds. I'm not saying last round. I'm talking about for this season.
Yeah.
There's a slow start to everyone that's chalk. And so I've kind of brought that up a few times in that verbiage, but I agree with what you're saying, which is sometimes when we're looking at chalk based on who the player is and not what they've scored in these first 4 rounds, I don't know that there's a lot of good chalk out there. And again, I don't like that that's how we phrase it. We got to go with something better than good chalk and bad chalk. I
Yeah.
think that there is hype chalk. Maybe I'm just trying to make something up here as I go, not on purpose. I think there's hype chalk and there's real chalk. And hype chalk is Gazdag on a 2 after just posting a 3. It's Baribo on minutes played when he's the highest scoring player in the game so far, right? And I think that there has been some interesting lack of consistency across most, but not all, of the big names this season. And so I will
Yeah.
echo what you're saying, which is um, going with a little bit more gut. I'm not saying don't, we'll get into it in a minute. I'm not saying don't pick up Rusnak, don't pick up Benteke, but if you're a player who's played multiple seasons with us, it's good to maybe take a minute, especially when budgets are building, and say, okay, how has this person played? Not just what are their points, how has this person played? Are they on the road? Have they been doing better at home? Has their form from the name that I know carried over into this season yet? They'll hit, right?
Yeah.
Lucho will hit.
And
He's got a good situation there. Evander will hit. He's all of those things, but
yeah.
it's a very, very slow start to some of our bigger names
And
this season.
that's actually why this last week I grabbed Mukhtar, because he, on paper, passes the eye test. He looks really good.
But he didn't last season. So again, that's something that
Yeah.
if you
But I was like,
over,
hey, he's consistently getting bonus points. He's not scoring, but he's gotten bonus points in every game.
yes,
So I was like, why not?
Which is
And
something he hadn't done last season. So that is a great example of something to look for in these chalk players going into these next couple rounds. Okay. Well, let's just rip the Band-Aid off, okay? I got 47 points. I do have almost 115 in the bank. I'm at 114.8. This is getting embarrassing. It's a little bit ridiculous, and I am impressed that I've even shown up here today. Some surprises for me, as we mentioned before, just looking at the last couple teams of the week and looking at some of the players in there that I never would have considered. Names I know, but people I'm not looking at, and I need to start looking at, because like you said, it's not all, the top scoring players, the chalk players every week. It's a more diverse first four rounds as far as prices, names, and teams. So there's definitely a little more work going into it. I'm very, very surprised at LAFC.
And there was someone that pointed out, kind of with your dream team thing.
Mm-hmm.
Besides Messi, everybody was below 5% ownership.
Yes, yes. I looked at this for the previous round and talked about it. Oh, to Reid, I wasn't on the pod. I had a feeling about LAG going into this season. I was not hot on them, wasn't hot on Peck. Their defense last year was pretty bad. I didn't expect it to get much better. I just wasn't really feeling the return vibe for them. I could not have predicted this LAFC form. As you know, big Denis Bouanga fan. Their defense was very consistent last year. To watch, yes, they're in CCL. I know what that means. As a Sounders fan, we watch that every year, and it kills us, literally kills our players physically. But I'm just very surprised at their form to start this season. To lose 1-0 at home to Austin. Again, I know they played CCL midweek, but it was Continental. And so they're putting out a very expensive roster. They're putting out some very good players, and it's just not happening. And it physically hurts me not to pick Denis Bouanga at home against Austin. I have to talk myself out of it until kickoff of that game because I want to do it. But again, he's a name where he's not putting it together right now. So that was a big surprise to me. Also, another road team coming in, Vancouver, who also played CCC midweek and traveled internationally, beating FC Dallas at FC Dallas, full of rotation. Vancouver is a team I think we need to start paying attention to. I saw over the weekend that they have the most touches in opponents' boxes across the first four rounds than anyone. And their lineup, someone can fact check me, I don't think it's been the same any week as the previous week because they've rotated so well for CCC.
This might be a controversial take,
Okay.
but Vancouver looks better without Gald.
I feel like people step up. They don't look for him. They look to themselves. Does that make sense? And so that is definitely something to take into. Now, we say this now. They're losing several good players. Ali Ahmed, Brian White, a couple others for the weekend. So don't yell at us when we don't bring them up later in the episode. But yes, that is a team, new coach, generally new system, similar players. They're just using them differently. And I really like it. And I think I've been neglecting them. Another thing I have to shout out about my own mistakes and surprises here is in the captain's video that we put out last week. I talked about how Benteke has been very goal dependent and not heavy on bonus points. All he got were bonus points. All he did was get bonus points without a goal, and that was good to see because you want that from a striker. You don't want them to be goal dependent. It was good to see that from him. Definitely something to take into account. And then, yeah, my personal disappointments: all of Philadelphia, Philly defense, Philly midfield, Philly Baribo, still getting a price rise, but still. And then that NYCFC defense, I was not riding. I saw a lot of talk of triple stacking and these things, and I will give it to Meg in our Discord chat who said, I don't know what you guys are talking about because I don't see it. And
to be fair, it was
the
an own
price
goal from 15 yards
I know.
out.
I know, but still, and so I'm always one to avoid a full triple. There's not a lot of games that make me want to take that risk, but Philly and NYCFC ended up not being the teams to do it. Philly defense looked awful and just broken apart by Nashville, who hasn't been that impressive so far, but they surely were this round. And then just a general takeaway, something I've been contemplating, I'll probably bring up in therapy this week, is just, did I used to be good at this? Is this something that I dreamed about being good at? Because I'm just not sure what's going on with me. I got to figure it out. Rough start to the season for me this year. And I think a lot of people generally just not seeing the production that they are accustomed to. Doesn't mean it's not still fun. Just means that I hate myself a little bit every Sunday. But you know what? That's what I'm here for. Reid got 58 points. I'm just going to point that out because he beat me by 1, and I feel like he would like you to know that. And he gained $4 million. He also, I'll briefly talk about this as well. He noted that he stuck with Messi, and that was a big talking point. It's been a big talking point because he's not ever really injured, and so far. And so it's been a bit of a point of contention to Messi or to not Messi, of course, because Apple and MLS love to money grub. He's been on the Sunday night game for 2 rounds. So it's been tricky to decide if you want to have $10 million spent, 10.4.
Oh yeah, he did. Okay. That's what the big
but
news
just
was.
but even just keeping him, I had conversations with people that
him.
I very much respect that didn't, though, if that makes sense. So like it was a very, again, as it was the round before, do you or don't you Messi. And I think that's going to come up for us all year, folks. I think that's just something you're going to need to have a good pivot to.
Not
off
this
air.
week.
Not this week, off air. I talked about how, for me, if he was in the lineup and Messi wasn't, straight away Latte Lath was going to be not Suarez. That's where I would have gone. I think you just have to have that backup ready and decide. Eventually funds will get easier, but while they're still building, you just have to decide, is it worth it? Is it not? And this round it was definitely worth it, but last round it definitely wasn't. So just something to, help you pull your hair out every round, right? Okay, we are going to take a quick break and we'll move into our round preview and player targets for round 5.
It's magic.
And look who's here.
That's right.
Magic.
You take it. You do it.
Hello, and welcome to the MLS Fantasy Insider. As Jason would say. Hello, friends. That's right.
Friends.
Hello,
I
friends.
say friends at school a lot because I don't always remember all the kids' names. Hey, friends.
Do you really?
I mean, I run an aftercare program, Tyler. It's not like I have my own classroom. Sometimes I see 100
I
plus
did
kids.
aftercare.
Yeah.
I had like 50 to... No, it was like 70 kids in aftercare, and I would know all of them.
Yeah.
Toddle the Ruse Daycare also says friends.
Yeah, I pride myself. I'm about 95% for all of K8. I could tell you every
That's not
kid's
bad.
first name. But every so often, you get a new straggler or something, and so just, hey, friends,
Okay,
is my
yeah,
general.
those ones
Yeah.
are rough.
Yeah. So if you do it often, it doesn't feel weird to say it to one kid. Does that make sense? Yeah. That's my strategy.
So I tell you,
Sorry.
yes, I did Captain Messi, and it was funny because when I saw that he was playing, I went, yes, Messi. And Lady Boss looked up at me, and she said, I thought you didn't like Messi. And I went, fantasy soccer is complicated.
Yeah.
Fantasy soccer is complicated.
100%. Tyler and I both bet against Seattle this week hard. I picked up that keeper and Hartel. I almost had a triple.
I had the keeper too.
Yeah.
It's like
And
that.
Martel. And I had 2 shirt.
That is the comment. So, all right, get this set up here. All right, thank you everybody for being so good. Let's see here. Thank you, Ashley.
I told
and
Gene.
Tyler.
Don't worry.
Good. Yes, I saw that. Good, Gene. I specifically told them, Gene, to make sure you knew that the recording was started. So that was a very important thing I had to make sure happened. So let me get out the social for the second half of the show. You go out there on Twitter X. You go out here on Blue Sky Blue.
Excuse me.
There we go. All right. Let me come down here. So I have no team made. So we'll just go through and chitty chat.
That's fine.
All this
I
stuff.
didn't have
Tyler
a
and I
team
did.
made. That's why I was
Boo.
late.
Boo.
Oh, you guys, I
Boo.
did it.
Boo.
That's
All
the
right.
only
Totally
reason I
were
was so
working
late.
here. Mhm.
Here we go.
You weren't late. You were on time. Sorry. Go ahead, Reid.
Did we update the start of the? Let's see here. So, yeah. Okay. Good. Hello and welcome back to our second segment of the show where we're going to be previewing the round and talking about our target players. Surprise! I'm back. Thanks, Ashley and Tyler, for holding down the first part of the show. Let's get into this round 5 here. So matches start on Saturday, March 22nd at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with my FC Cincinnati versus Wojo's Atlanta. So nice little MLS Fantasy Insider Derby right there. As far as your Aru's planning go with the Apple schedule, this one is very well set up. The usual schedule: 2:30, 4:30, bunch of 7:30s, a few 8:30s, 9:30s, and a couple of 10:30s to get us taken care of out on the West Coast. But for the first time this year, even easier, we have 2 teams on a bye this round. Let's see here. Oh, horrible. I'm so sorry. I'll have to edit that out. But yes, we have 2 teams on a bye this round, and that is, as was alluded to in the first half of the show, we have Miami and New England out on a bye, which is going to make your Aru's incredibly easy. But if you don't want to use those teams, you still have Austin and San Diego playing in the Sunday game at 4 o'clock. So plenty of options. And if this was later in the year, we'd be having Moneybags Ashley talking to us about how she's going to have Messi be her scrub player to just come in here because she's got plenty of money. So we'll see. But that's how it all lines up. Open Cup it's going on. I don't believe anyone's really playing in just yet. I haven't looked at the schedule, to be honest, for the
There's a
Open
couple
Cup.
MLS teams, but I would expect rotation.
It's at this early in the game. It's-
LAFC and
yeah.
SKC, I think.
Yeah, well, I mean, that might be the only thing Sporting Kansas City's got going for it this year. So
Ooh.
I'm sorry, but yeah, I haven't looked at it much. But this early in the cup, a lot of it doesn't even usually tend to affect actual games until later rounds. So we have that, and of course, keep up with the CCC. You see who's there. Look at the schedule. There's a little bit of a gap now between the next games, but you've seen how some of these teams have rotated and who's still making it. So just keep up with all that. International duty is also coming up with some call-ups. Most notably, Messi is not called up, but he's on the bye, so don't worry about that anyway. So that was the article I saw earlier today that came out saying he is not on the Argentinian team. But as always, head over to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. Check out the mega reference in our fantasy tools section. You will see an ongoing list of international call-up confirmations, any sort of injuries, any sort of cards. We had several of those happen in this past round, so be sure to check that out. 2025 mega reference, which is curated very lovingly by the members of the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord, including our very own Tyler, who was with us on the show tonight.
Yeah.
But that's enough of the housekeeping. Let's get into talking about players we are targeting going into round 5, starting with keepers and defenders. Tyler, who are you looking at?
Yeah, I'm gonna go cheap on goalies this week. I have Schmier for Minnesota, who's the backup to Dane St. Clair. The only reason I have him is because he's cheap and he's at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then the true goalie that I'm actually expecting to get a clean sheet is I have it going into Lunt for St. Louis.
Okay.
And it would be on Joe Willis if he was not $8.
Yeah.
But that's ridiculous for a goalie, so I'm gonna keep it
Yeah.
on 5.5 Lunt. For defenders, I'm someone who always loves to pair my defenders with a goalie, or my goalies with a defender. So I
Yep.
have Hebert on my team just because he's the cheapest St. Louis back. I believe never mind. I was gonna say I believe that there is a chance that somebody else could be in the defense for them, but I don't think so. I also have Lovitz this week because I love the Nashville team. That one was a knee slapper. I would keep a very close eye on who is opposite of Lovitz because Nahar is called up. So
Yep.
whoever is on the opposite side could be a very cheap way into the Nashville defense.
Stop taking my notes.
I'm expecting someone like Taylor Washington is who I think will be there. And I
Literally
think
in
he's
my
like
team.
$5 something.
He is.
Yeah. And then I'm just going for a random cheap flyer after that. I have mine currently on Raheem Edwards because it's a home game and he was out of position. Back to our conversation.
But he's so bad.
He's a
He
home
did you
game
watch the
position.
game?
No, I didn't. I was asleep.
He looked I hear you, money out of position. I like it. He looked so bad though, Tyler.
I'm just gonna look for anybody. Like if
Yeah.
Taylor is starting, I'm going to grab him because I don't have a whole lot of money and I'm just looking for an out of position guy or a cheap guy at that point.
I think it's still a good time for that.
And
I'm just warning you now.
Yeah. To appeal to the general public, I very much like Orishano this week.
Mhm.
However, this guy is like $8 plus. Are you really gonna spend that on someone who's not named Kai Wagner?
And playing Atlanta, I mean, he's playing at home, but he's playing Atlanta, which is a decent to good team. It's different. If you tell me, FC Cincy is starting the round off against, I don't know, Toronto or
Toronto.
That's a great game. That's a great game.
Yeah, or San Jose or Montreal, then
I would be different. Yeah.
But I
also very much so like Bongi Hongwane just because of how much he gets into the attack. Like he's dangerous. But again, he's like $8 something, and I don't have a whole lot of faith that Minnie's going to get a clean sheet this week, given they don't have Dane St. Clair. They're missing their center back in Boxall, and I think they're missing Carlos Harvey. So there's a lot of guys out, and I would be very nervous about them getting a clean sheet. But yeah, that's where I'm at defensively.
Okay.
Ashley.
I'm going Smear, which is a fun name that I feel like comes out of like Lemony Snicket's. I'm really here for it. I'm going Smear, the Minnesota backup to Stephen Fry. Stephen Fry's still so cheap because Seattle defense has been so bad. But it's a timing that I like. It's a matchup that I like. I like the Lunt shout. I'm just a little worried on the road. Philly has still scored. Their fantasy players just didn't produce last round. Do you know what I mean? So
okay, name the guys that have scored.
The Lukic scored last week, and then they've scored every game. I'm just saying they've scored.
And I'm also saying that Baribo's out, and he's scored most of their games.
Yeah, but he didn't score the last round.
And he didn't score the round before. Out.
Yeah. Again, I like the shout. The travel is what makes me hesitant, but the price is great. He should be in for a while.
St. Louis is what I.
St. Louis
They're already on 4 straight. Make it 5.
Yes, but the first 3 were Berkey, and I think that will be a factor. I do. Berkey is amazing. Lunt is a seasonal backup. So, but for prices, this is the round to save some money on keepers because there's keepers that don't start that are starting. Lunt being one of them, Schmier being one of them. Yvonne Bush for Columbus should be starting. I like to we call him Yvonne Bush.
You got Budry for Colorado,
Yeah,
Colodi for Dallas.
Mhm. There's a
Those-
couple.
yeah.
Check your lineups, friends. Check the check the travel list, but there are a few cheap keeper options for you to kind of make some money this week, hopefully. For defenders, again, I don't know why I just keep falling into this over and over again, but I am going to Alex Roldan. That's the Seattle defender I like the most. They're out of CCL. They honestly looked very good against St. Louis on the road. I think there's a little bit of pep in the step for going out of CC, seeing everybody getting hurt in that game. And it's a home game against Houston, decent timing. Weather should be good. I don't know. I'm overthinking. I'm being a little bit of a homer, but I do like that Seattle back end defense. I literally wrote in my notes, cheap Nahar alternate. Tyler sold this for me. I also think it's Taylor Washington. He's 5.5. Two great minds think alike. I think that's a cheap way to look at that national defense. Missing Andy Nahar really shouldn't take that much away from them defensively. And I do like that matchup a lot because it's Montreal, right? I agree with you. I'm not going to pay for Joe Willis, but I'll pay for a cheap defender. Gallagher for Austin is someone that I'm looking at this week. Another just cheap name that I like for potential price rise is Duggan. I hear you about Minnesota. I'm worried about who they have out, and I'm worried that generally they could leak a goal, but I don't know. I don't know them super well, but that might be, a decent little bench play if I go that way. And then I'm going Melanda from Charlotte, who is expensive, but I'm either going to plug in him or Jano and decide who do I want to spend almost $9 million on for a defender, which seems so stupid this round. But I don't have to pay for Messi. He's not even my scrub. So I think it's something that I am gonna work on. But again, if you want cheap international break, because we play through it, which is absolutely asinine, there will be cheap players who haven't played yet or haven't been starting. And if that's where you want to save some money this week, I think there's a lot of opportunities in defense for some money to be saved.
I mean, who knows if that's going to be the case if we switch to this new calendar? We'll find out what happens in the years to come. I mean, you guys have hit a lot of the high notes for defense. I mean, what I like to do is go to the Discord and check out in sort of the odds section what people are posting about some of the clean sheet chances and not. I'm glad you mentioned Charlotte. I mean, I was super impressed with them against Cincinnati, just with the pressure that they had right there. And so I think that's a good shout out for defense, especially against San Jose. I'm not off on San Jose like I was last year, like always bet against them. I just like Charlotte for what we see is that they've already played strong against two of the better offensive producing teams right now. I mean, they dropped 2 to Seattle early in the season where things are kind of getting all warmed up. Only dropped 1 to Inter Miami when they played them a couple of weeks ago. So that was no Messi, but that was still a strong team that they fielded. And so I think they've had some of the strong challenges, and I don't rank San Jose as high up there. And so, I mean, I think looking at Kalina and some of those guys would definitely expensive. Be. Yeah. But I mean, if you're going to pair him up with Smear, then that's.
I love this name, you guys.
Thanks. It just kind of all balances out right there.
Bush.
But you can see, like you were saying, my plan for going with defense this week is I'm still just kind of looking at some of the budget guys. With call ups and everything going on, we tend to see randomness. There have been some years where we've seen, or even some rounds where we've seen some more clean sheets because players aren't familiar with each other. There have been some times when it's just been crazy goals because of who's missing at what are those key places. Just depends on how the lineups match. And so I'm still planning on going with a few budget players here so I can splurge on some of the quality guys who are still around, and there's going to be plenty of defensive options right there. So I'm going to wait a little bit longer into the week, see what some of the odds come out with some of the predictions based on who is confirmed called up, and then go from there for that. Some of the information is already available over at MLSsoccer.com. Every call up for March 2025 international window is posted as of earlier this afternoon. So you can see a lot of that information right there and go and see, then cross-reference that with fantasy and see who's starting, such as Atlanta, as you mentioned. Denke's gone for Cincinnati. Orishano is back. Atlanta's missing, looks like one starting defensive player. So still a lot of that defensive unit intact. We'll see how that goes for everybody. But looking over to chat.
Really quick before we leave defenders, can we just shout out the return of my guy, Brooks Lennon?
Go for it.
That assist.
That's right.
Looking lovely. Back early from that shoulder injury. Oh, so happy he's back.
We're quickly moving towards the time where it may once again be just getting Wagner and Lennon and being like, that's it. That's who we're running with. And then find somebody else. Like, it's going to be 2024 all over again. And we wouldn't have it any other way. But yeah, I mean, see some people mentioning Takaoka there in chat. Some of the same names you guys mentioned with the rotations. I mean, you guys know my feelings about Vancouver. They always seem to let me down when I'm right there with them. So we shall see. The thing I will say about Orishano, it'll be interesting to see how it all works with MK gone. He's great with that hold up play. He just seemed to not be able to really be effective in that last game against MHR. Same thing with Evander, wasn't able to really seem to be effective in the game, and so Orishano probably got more involved and was more into creating, and so he would likely be the one that I would lean to if you're going to splurge, but it has to be a bench play. If you think they're
last round.
Who?
Orishano?
Well, I'm not talking about fantasy. I'm talking about just watching the player getting in there trying to do this stuff. Yeah.
I was just trying to look at what he got. He got 1 point.
It was when you it was rough.
Okay, sorry. My apologies.
It was rough, but he was making the runs, making the crosses. He seemed to be more involved than like Evander was. And if you're looking for a defender who has a chance of getting the bonus points, he's doing the actions. Didn't pay off in fantasy. He's not been in as long, and so you have to be aware of the potential of losing some money. Though at this point in the season, hitting in round 5, round 6, you've likely built up enough of a little buffer there that if you do have some guys you can start going on the edge with, and you lose some, it's going to be okay. You'll probably make it up other places there, and you can still find some good value gains this round as well. Okay, let's move on to midfielders. Ashley, who are you looking at?
I like midfield. I like Rusnak. First in my team this week. I haven't had him all season. I've been trying to play that cheap game of Georgie Manungu and Paul Rothrock, and each time I had them, they didn't hit. So they hit different games. So I'm done with them. Moving into that Rusnak. I like Ojeda. I liked Ojeda the first 2 rounds. I don't know why I dropped him on the road against New York. That was silly. He looks great. He's really producing in that role. I like Mihalovic. I like Jordy. I also like Cole Bassett, as we're talking about some alternatives to the chalk. I like Cole Bassett. So that might be a kind of, where do I want to spend my money? I like Mukhtar, which is a sentence that I'm happy to say again. And I know this is one too many, but I do like Hartel on the road. I think that they aren't missing too many people, and they should have a little bit of a opportunity, right, against a very lack of starters, because normal starters that Philly will roll out. That should be a pretty rotated side, and they haven't looked as dominant as at home this season as they have in the past. So I think that Hartel would be a good road shout this week.
Tyler.
I actually think mids are very difficult to pick this week. There's probably about 8 mids that are viable, and it's trying to figure out which one is.
And none of them will be on the team of the week.
Go on.
I think 1, maybe 2.
Okay.
Just like Ashley, I have Rusnak this week. He's been consistent enough. He should be on everybody's team, especially when you're looking for players who are consistent. Period. I have Martin Ojeda for Orlando. Kind of the same idea, although he's a little more goal dependent. I very much so like Mukhtar this week, hosting a Montreal side that is not very good defensively, like at all this season. or any season. You guys know how much I don't like Montreal's defense. Uh, I I really like Marcel Hartel because in net for Philly is supposed to be either Semley or Rick, and both of those guys have a very bad goals against average. So he's more than likely going to be on my team, even though he's on the road. I just need to figure out how. And then currently I have Evander on my team. I'm kind of waffling between Evander, Mihailovic, Dreyer, and who is the other one? Christian Espinoza. Those are the main ones I'm kind of waffling between. I like Evander the most though, because although his goals are a little few and far between, he's still in this adjustment period. And I believe since he's out of CCC now,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So he's going to be able to be more consistent, not as tired. And Atlanta's missing quite a few guys. So I actually really like the Evander play this week.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can.
Sorry,
Yeah.
cutting you off. Just to throw out a couple differentials if people are looking for cheaper guys. In Nashville, you have Tagseth and Kasem, who are very much doing well on their own. Yep. I love Tagseth. He looks like a little like antagonizer, but he can play his way out of it. And then to throw out another random name that nobody's gonna mention, not even in chat, Goncalves for RSL actually looks pretty good.
Mentioned in chat
this week. Oh, he was?
Yeah.
And specifically because they play FC Dallas, and Dallas has allowed, I believe, 2 or more goals in every game except for this last one where they allowed 1 at home.
Yeah, that's a great shout out. Yeah, I do think there are a lot of good midfield options, and a lot of that is because of the rotations that we're seeing. From what you were talking about with that St. Louis game, my edge goes to Hartel, just because of the bonus point production he's been getting, like all those key passes that he's throwing out there. I'm surprised that he only has 1 assist after all of that, and so I'm surprised.
No goals.
And no goals, but so that's where my money goes between St. Louis. McGlynn is still around, I believe. I haven't seen him on any of the calls.
No, he just got called up for
Did he? Okay, then I didn't see that one in the call up. So scratch that. I missed that. But yeah, Rusnak, DaCosta, I'd add on that list. On the road, Colorado. Enjoy Colorado. Rotated. Like to see, but they're rotated, and he's been doing well last few rounds. So I think DaCosta's a good road shout out that we can give. So I really think there are a lot of options. I mean, you guys have touched on other ones. I'm not going to bother just rehashing everything. But there are some good options there to go with, whatever that can fit your budget as well. So again, I'm going to come back. I don't want it to be a cop out, but this is how some of a call up round works. For those of you who this may be having your first MLS call up round, get these players on your watch list, see how things develop throughout the week when you start seeing and have some plans for the lineups you see. This will be a round where you have to kind of be aware of those lineups. We post them on the Discord so you can catch them when they drop out there. But have some of that in your mind of, okay, this is my top 3. I want to make sure I have these guys in there. Get your benches set up. Super easy with the 2 teams in a bye. But yeah, just track some of these players and don't be afraid to make some adjustments based on the formations that you see come out. If they're players you like, don't overthink it. This is maybe me talking out of both sides of my mouth right now, but have that back there. Have that in the back of your mind, the reasons of why you want certain players. And if you see that scenario playing out, like Tyler was saying, look who is playing opposite of this player. If it's someone who's weak, I like that matchup. That means I want this guy instead of my number 2 guy. So have those sort of scenarios in your head. Mention them in chat. Hit people up on Twitter. Just kind of see what they say. Don't overthink it, but do have some contingency plans if you have a scenario you like better. I hope that does not sound like I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. It just comes from seeing it for so long. That's just like, this is how it has to be. It has to be. Go ahead.
With the mention of Lukic in chat, he does look pretty good for Philly, and he's been scoring, but I think he's getting into those positions because players like Gazdag and Baribo are pulling most of the attention away, and then Lukic is able to slide in. So I think this week will be more difficult for him, especially against the St. Louis side, who has 4 shutouts this season.
Yeah. Agree. I think that's just trying to ride a hot hand.
Yeah.
It's not with everybody out. I don't think it's a great play.
All right. There doesn't see anybody else in chat, so let's move on to forwards. Tyler, who are you looking at?
I have the Techers himself, probably the most consistent player this entire season thus far. I think he is. I think he's the most consistent so far. So I'm going to
Sorry,
keep
my
Teke.
reaction was to 3 people in, not to Benteke. I
Oh.
let Benteke shut.
Oh, you read my whole thing.
Yeah.
After that, I'm kind of going against the grain after that, probably. I really like Gabriel Peck this week. He's might not be on most people's radar, but I think with his bonus points, I mean, he scored a goal in week 2 to get a 7, and then the last 2 weeks have been a 7 and a 6 with no goal contributions at all. And that to me says he's due. But he's also against a Minnesota team that is missing 2 of their defenders and their main goalie. So I think Peck is gonna get on the ball quite a bit, and I really am. I love the idea of him. My third forward, I needed a cheap guy, and the cheapest way to get into someone who actually looked like they might be worth something is the guy who likes to tempt red cards, Jesus Ferreira. He really should have been red carded last game.
In the St. Louis game.
But just like our argument for Rusnak, it's a Seattle team against a weak Houston team. They haven't been good at all this season, and they are missing now McGlynn, who's their top player. And I wouldn't mind just riding the bench for Ferreira and see what I get out of him.
Ashley.
I hate that, and here's why. You can grab the striker whose name I can't pronounce from Charlotte, Egemon.
He's
did it.
Called
got
up.
there.
He's called up.
He got called up.
Yep.
It was the same price, was what I was gonna say. I am very concerned about how Jesus Ferreira has looked for Seattle. When he starts, he's not finishing a game. If he doesn't start, he's coming in as a sub. He looks super frustrated and like borderline angry. And I've watched Jesus for Dallas for most of his time there, and I don't remember seeing him like this there. I don't know if this isn't the fit he wanted. I don't know if there's issues with the coaching staff. I don't know if he's just pissed because every good playmaker that he has is getting hurt. I don't know. But I don't like him yet. Maybe this is the round that gets him off the ground.
I think he also
Houston
he plays
at
the 9, I think, this week.
He's playing at a 9 this week for sure. Houston is a team, he grew to dislike his whole life. Maybe that is what gets him going, but I have concerns over Jesus Ferreira to start this
I'm gonna roll the dice.
You're right, he's cheap. I like it. I'm very worried about it. I also have Benteke. I think Benteke is a kind of not a lock, but it was first in for me. I like Zaha. I liked them both, but I didn't see that he got called up. I like Zaha. I like Navarro. I like the 4-named striker for New York Red Bull, whose name I can't pronounce, so I just wrote ECM. Tyler.
Sorry, I need to pull it up. I can't remember.
He took a PK last week over Forsberg, and I'm interested.
Choupo-Moting.
Thank you.
Moting.
And I'm interested to see if that's forever or if that's just to get him off the ground, right? As a new signing. So that's definitely something to pay attention to, but I like Red Bull's matchup, so I think I might slot him in. And then Yeboah, who my understanding was he wasn't healthy enough to start the game last week, but he should be this week. So assuming he's fit, I do like that matchup for him.
Yeah, I don't have many more to add. The only name that I will add on there, I don't think you all mentioned, is Surridge. That is a bit of a flyer with it, I guess we could say, but it's based off of he got the goal last week, so maybe a start to form going up against Montreal, not a strong defensive team, and he gets so many key passes. Like he generates bonus points that you want to see from a forward, but it's not also supplemented by the production that you want to see from the forward. Like if I get a goal and then several of those key passes, or an assist and several of those key passes, I'm much more happy as having this guy be like a solid bench forward, a solid number 2 forward that I'm having, because of just where it's getting made up from there. But go for it.
I feel like I need to mention this name just because he's on an absolute killer goal streak right now. Okay. Hugo Kuipers has scored 4 goals in his last 3 games, 2 of them being on the road. There is a chance he could make his way onto my team this week. I need to work around stuff and figure out, but I do really like him this week too.
No, absolutely agree with that. I hadn't put him on the notes, but he was a name that I was going to mention because I had him on my team last week as well, and that was why I added him last week. He was one of my bench. I had Benteke and Kuipers both on the bench, came in with 9 and 6 points, so helped me out huge right there. My forwards did great. I know I missed that part of the show. I hope you mentioned that I beat you by 1 point, Ashley.
She did.
Good.
Did I?
Good.
It's okay. I beat you by 9.
Good. That's fine. That's fine.
But Reid would want to know that he beat me by. Yeah, I said it exactly like.
Good. Excellent. But no, so I mean, like I did well with my forwards last week, and that's because I did have Kuipers as well because of that very, very bit of form that he had going on. In addition to that, I like the schedule. Betting against Toronto is a pretty consistent thing right now. So I enjoyed that. And I had the same train of thought. That was going to be the last name that I mentioned was potentially him. See where Vancouver is. I mean, they got a CCC break, hit or miss with defense historically in this year as well with him. So got some call-ups. So see what happens with Vancouver. But I could absolutely see why you'd want to have Kuipers on your bench, especially since he is likely going to be getting another point increase if that's something you still need to get, or just want to have somebody on your bench who you feel has a good shot at getting some points, and if not, you'll probably at least come away with some value from them. I mean, it's kind of a win-win if you do go with him on the bench right there. So it depends on your budget, but yeah, those are the main 2 that I would add, Kuipers and Surridge. Just going to see both of them likely on the fringe as your number 3 spot with the forward. Absolutely should be a bench play with this round, and so you can go from there with that. Checking out chat real quick. Yeah, seems like a lot of people are on the same page. Really like that Navarro shout out that you mentioned, Ashley. I think he's been doing well with getting some good points as well. But let's move on to captains. And I will say real quick before we get into this with Tyler, I had a fun interaction on Twitter last week where people were talking about Suarez as being a backup captain for Messi. And the comment was made, is the Suarez Aru now a thing? And this came from Gavin Harris on Twitter. And I was like, what I said was, I like where your mind is. I like where the mind is as the community that originated and pioneered the Arus. I like where you're thinking. I think I'd go more from, I'm going to give this as a community option. Tyler and Ashley, I want your feedback right now, but everybody else to think on it. I have 3 options here. 1, going with the traditional Swaru. That kind of just flows. Maybe a little bit too garbly right there out of the mouth, but a Swaru could be something. But then I also like a combination of BSC or SBC, standing for backup Suarez captain, or would be Suarez backup captain. So going with our traditional always captain name, so ACM for Messi, being it like BCS, backup captain Suarez, something like that could be another acronym that I could get behind for just capturing uniquely Suarez, of like, Messi's gone, put it on Suarez, that's fine. I don't know, where do you guys fall for that?
I like Swaru. Personally, I'm leaning heavily into Swaru.
It feels like it should be shortened. Like we could do Suarez Aru, but that feels like it's too long.
Oh, I like where you're going with that. I like Swaroo.
Swaroo.
I think you get it enough. Yeah, it's shorter but not too short. And the
Black and
Aru
Red had a
is.
quick. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, Aru is our podcast family emblem. So
Yeah, Black and Red had a quick question for you, Reid. Who's replacing Denki up top?
Oh, good question with that for the call up with Cincinnati.
Yeah.
I mean, my guess was it would be Santos. I don't think Baird. If it's Baird, don't do it. I like him. I think he does a good job. He has so much hustle. He kind of does a good job of kind of trying to be dangerous, but I don't find him very effective. I think Santos would be the likely person to start as the replacement for Dinke. I don't know if he'll go the full, and so it'll probably be a combination of that. But I'd expect Santos to be the one who gets the.
Will make his way up there.
I mean, it wouldn't. He's kind of there already with that. They may move away from a one up top and may have two up top, and could go with both of them there. Seeing if Orshano moves into more of a playmaking role. I guess Evander will be there, and so, but just kind of see what happens there. But I mean, it could absolutely be Kubo up there by himself or paired up. But as far as replacing the player, I would think Santos would be the more like for like switch. The bigger question for Cincinnati is, of course, going to be defense. What's going on with Miles Robinson? The very unfortunate 2 yellow cards for Flores there. The first yellow card I have no problems with at all. That's absolutely what you have to do. Second one's very unfortunate. So definitely going to be hurting at defense with Cincinnati. So that would be my biggest concern with them. Yeah, Santos. All right. I took you away. Don't see people talking there. Swoo. Oh, some people are going just with the swoo. Kind of like that. That's kind of fun. Enough of that. Swarcharu. Maybe. That one's kind of getting
like
stuck.
Someone said, I think this was Tyler was trying to go for the Luis Swaroo. I like that. It does sound like someone's name though when you do two.
Well, but I like the general concept. But enough of that quick aside. That was a real fun interaction with Gavin on Twitter, so it's good. We'll try to get him on a show sometime. Let's talk about captains though for this round. We'll put out a video later, which has been a fun thing Ashley and I've been doing. But Tyler, who are you looking at right now?
I'm actually leaning towards Mukhtar as my captain. I like Rusnak too, but I think I'm gonna end up on Mukhtar this week.
Bold. I mean, I get it though.
Yeah.
Ashley.
Yeah. I think I will go Rusnak, but I like Mukhtar, and that was the only person I generally considered. I want to go Benteke. He has been so consistent, even though he didn't score last round. Well, he did, and then they called it back, but whatever. I think that going into Orlando, who's not great defensively, and they should have backup keeper too, right? I don't know. I don't like it as much. I think you could look at it, but I always prefer a home captain unless the matchup is right. So Rusnak for now.
Rusnak from now. Mukhtar right there. Yeah, I mean, I think you have a lot more options. I mean, that's the beauty of what happens when Messi is gone, or he's for sure not going to be playing. At least I guess we'll say that, because even if it's questionable, you might still captain Messi. I mean, I think both of those guys could be there. You could throw Surge in there for similar reasons to Mukhtar. I think. I mean, Rusnak, I think, is leading the pack, but you also have Ojeda still around there at Orlando going up against DC, who is not a great defensive team themselves right there. I mean, you could look at some of the strong forward options still available at Charlotte that you could go with. Seeing who's there with LAFC going up against Sporting Kansas City, one of the teams that we like to bet against. Just not Giroud, so don't worry about that. Or one of these differential forward options that we mentioned. I mean, it has become more of a norm to captain a forward with Messi in the league, where if you've not been with the show as long, that has been a position we've historically, some of us have been hesitant to captain, myself included, just because of most of them being kind of boom or bust. But when it was people like Higuain who were here, you felt better because of the bonus points. Surge would be someone who you should put in that mold, who hasn't been as consistent. So Keane, someone like that back in the day, those were people you were more comfortable with. It just seems like par for the course now. But some of these forwards, I think, absolutely could be on your list. And so, again, we're going to bat them around, see what we think, and then we'll have a video come out on YouTube later on. So it should be fun. But for me, right now, I too would lean Rusnak. Chat real quick, see if anybody had that. Yeah, there's an Ojeda in there. Evander, yeah. Well, I mean,
I like Ojeda. I like that shout.
Yeah, Ojeda's a good one. Evander, I think, is pretty bold. I'd like to see a little bit more production first before I really feel good there. So we'll see. Yeah, currently a Rusnak. So yeah, there's a small pool, but I think there's some good arguments for several of these players, and we'll see what we start to land on at the end of the season. All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight. Big thank you to Ashley and Tyler for helping kick things off. Just doing some family things tonight, and so wanted to make sure I got that sorted out before joining the show. So knew we were in good hands as always. Let's wrap things up with our plugs. Tyler.
I'm just gonna plug the article again. Go check out the differentials article. We've actually been on a pretty good streak so far. It's
sure
just
have,
Matt
yeah.
and I this year, so make sure to check it out. It gives you some extra guys to keep an eye on throughout the week.
Ashley.
Yeah, I'm gonna similarly just plug the content that we've been so lucky to be putting out, and thankful to be having more people from Discord contribute to. Differentials, solid seasoned group, but there's other things that MLSFI has been putting out. So shout out to people from Discord who are helping contribute to that, and definitely give it a look see.
Yeah, and a huge shout out again to Wojo, who's helping coordinate the articles. Got a little bit jumbled last week with getting the article schedule out, some stuff I was doing at work, but check that out. We're trying to get stuff out every day of the week. Monday, of course, is the podcast, so you get that. But yeah, all sorts of great articles coming there, MLSFantasyBoss.com. And as we've mentioned during the show multiple times, be sure, if you're not already, if you're joining us for the first time here on YouTube or just catching the podcast, head over to the MLS Fantasy Boss Discord. It's a fantastic community, hands down the best MLS fantasy community that there is online that you can join and be a part of, which is questions and tips and all sorts of resources. The easiest way to get to that, MLSFantasyBoss.com/Discord. It's free, it's fun, and you can interact with literally, and I am not just saying this to try to get the clicks. You can interact with people who are some of the top players in the game, who have won this game, who are frequently in the top 5, 10, 15, 20 of the entire game. You can be there, you can ask your questions and have fun doing it. So head over to the Discord, and as always,